In Venezuela, the head of state, Nicolás Maduro, emphasized that in 90 days, the definite proposal for the 2025 constitutional reform must be ready. On Wednesday, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa opened the G20 Summit of Finance and Economic Ministers in Cape Town. And Israel has carried out a series of strikes in Syria, leaving at least 2 dead in the town of Sargaya, north of Damascus. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Venezuela, the head of state, Nicolás Maduro, emphasized that in 90 days, the definite proposal for the 2025 constitutional reform must be ready. During the meeting of the National Commission for Constitutional Reform, the president stated that once the 60-day debate sessions have been held, the final drafting phase of the proposal generated by the expanded debate should begin. He also stressed that he entrusts in the commitment of the deputies of the National Assembly to deliver the constitutional reform to the National Electoral Council in a reasonable time and to proceed with the referendum elections in the country. In this context, he also stressed that members of the failed opposition bench have reappeared to cause confusion and sow fear among the Venezuelan people with regard to this constitutional reform. Now we continue in Venezuela as the President Nicolás Maduro also received the Japanese architect Riken Yamamoto at the Simon Bolivar Hall of the Miraflores Palace. During the meeting, proposals were discussed to consolidate urban structures in the country's cities, in addition to advancing towards the self-management of each territory through the organization of the communes. It should be noted that this initiative seeks to strengthen sustainable development and communal self-governance. In this sense, Yamamoto's collaboration with Venezuela strengthens international ties and promotes an innovative approach to urban planning in the region. And in this regard, the head of state, Nicolás Maduro, also held a meeting with the great Muslim religious authority of Lebanon, Aleb Muhammad al-Ghazawi, to strengthen ties of friendship between Venezuela and Lebanon. During the meeting, President Maduro reaffirmed Venezuela's intention for both countries to continue strengthening the diplomatic relations established in 1946. Other authorities, such as the representatives of the Lebanese embassy in the Venezuelan territory, were also present in this meeting. And we now move on to other topics. In Colombia, the police arrested a 40-year-old man who tried to smuggle several bags of cocaine hidden under a carefully placed tupi onto a flight to the Netherlands. According to the police, the suspect was arrested on Monday at Cartagena airport as he was about to board a flight to Amsterdam. As can revealed, the hidden shipment of 220 grams of cocaine packed in small bags strategically placed under the narco wig. Police estimate the street value of the drug to be approximately 10,000 euros on European markets. In this context, a police video captured the moment when an officer wearing blue gloves carefully removes the suspect with scissors, revealing approximately a dozen pockets of cocaine.
After scanning this person, we found he had a wig containing more than 220 grams of cocaine, which he intended to take to the Netherlands. With this action, we attached the criminal revenue in Europe with an estimated price of more than 10,000 euros. This is the second detention at the airport in these checkpoints.
And in Guatemala, survivors of the military dictatorship held a march to pay tribute to the more than 200,000 victims of the internal armed conflict. Santiago Tong with the details.
Es la conmemoración del Día Nacional.
This is the commemoration of the National Day for the dignity of the victims of the internal armed conflict in Guatemala, and Mayanachi women, who are currently seeking justice in the courts, are also participating in the march.
They join this demand for justice, this demand that the state should no longer use sexual violence as a weapon of war. It is also a demand to the army.
Los sobrevivientes de la dictadura militar han
Survivors of the military dictatorship have arrived in the Guatemalan capital to demand that the government of Bernardo Arevalo fulfill its commitment, announced a year ago, to promote a program for the dignification of the victims.
We ask for material reparation, restitution of land, truth, and above all to attend to the elderly women who lost their children, their husbands, in the internal armed conflict.
Los sobrevivientes denuncian que por el
The survivors denounce that, on the contrary, the government has prioritized economic compensation for more than 40,000 former paramilitaries, which contradicts the narrative of a democratic government, as they have reiterated.
It is not possible that the military is being compensated. This does not fit in the mind of a civilized citizenry, to compensate the one who did wrong and to persecute the one who is doing good.
Además de la demanda por la dignificación.
In addition to the demand for the dignification of the victims, there is still a large number of survivors who continue to search for their loved ones who disappeared during the 36 years of military dictatorship.
We continue in the struggle, in the search for justice, in the search for the disappeared, and on behalf of the victims of the internal armed conflict, we will continue to commemorate this day.
El Día Nacional de la Dignificación.
The National Day for the Dignity of the Victims of the Internal Armed Conflict was established following the presentation of the Historical Memory Report in 1999, which revealed that the state committed crimes of genocide.
Santiago Botón, teleSUR, Ciudad de Guatemala.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. Wednesday, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa opened the G20 Summit of Finance and Economic Ministers in Cape Town. Multilateralism was once again the common factor in the opening speeches. Recalling the group was founded on the principles of cooperation, the president called on the developed and emerging powers that make up this alliance to deepen multilateral cooperation. He referred to the escalation of tensions and the unprecedented global uncertainty to underline the importance of working together. The agenda of this conclave focuses on the reform of the financial architecture without neglecting to analyze the tariff threats from the United States, a country that is not attending this meeting. And from the United States, social organizations have rejected the aggressiveness of the Secretary of State Marco Rubio against Cuba, reminding him that the island's cooperation has saved lives all over the world while Washington is exporting wars. The Interreligious Foundation for the community organization Pastors for Peace has recalled the initiatives and programs of the island, such as the Latin American School of Medicine, which has become not only an opportunity to study, but also to train sensitive professionals. The Americans trained in this institution take over the sectors condemned by death by the country's capitalist machine because they do not have the means to pay for million-dollar treatments. And we go now to Chile, as the country has managed to restore electricity to approximately 90% of the country's homes following a massive blackout that affected most of the territory. The blackout, which extended from the Arica region in the north to Los Lagos in the south, left millions of people without electricity and paralyzed essential services such as the subway and also the mining activity. President Gabriel Boric declared a state of emergency and established a curfew to guarantee public safety. The National Electricity Coordinator activated a recovery plan to restore service as soon as possible. As electricity is restored, authorities continue to work to fully normalize services in the country. And Laura Richardson's replacement in the Southern Command traveled to Panama from February 19th to the 20th to meet with the Canal Administrator Ricaurte Vázquez, the Foreign Minister Javier Martínez Sacha, and Security Minister Frank Abrego. Our colleague Reca Chaviramandi with the details.
Alvin Hosley, la nueva cabeza del Comando Sur,
Alvin Hosley, the new head of the Southern Command who replaced Laura Richardson in that division of the U.S. Department of Defense, visited Panama to increase the scope of the already tight control, now labeled as cooperation with key institutions in the country. The president of Panama had already signed several information exchange, security, and migration agreements with the Joe Biden administration. However, the hostility of the new government did not prevent Hosley's visit from sealing larger agreements, the full extent of which has yet to be revealed.
Cuya extensión aún no se ha revelado en su totalidad.
The visit of the commander of the Southern Command, let it be redundant, to our territory makes it clear, loud and clear, who is giving the orders to the government, who is personally directing the operations of aggression and interference in our territory by the armed forces of the United States, by the interests, by the mandates of the White House. The acceptance on the part of the Mulino government is a disgrace, but the people will know how to respond. The people are resisting all the applications of the neoliberal model that has to do with this onslaught of imperialism.
Hosley arrived in the midst of a scandal over migrants being held in a hotel and transferred to a camp in the province of Darien, from where they would be repatriated. The scope of this concession, which some criticize as a covert military base, is also unclear. On the other hand, the insistent narrative of the United States Embassy in Panama about the alleged direct threat from the Chinese Communist Party annoyed the president.
We are not going to talk about lies. That is adding to the morbidity that somehow has been created around the Chinese issue in Panama and the control of the Chinese Communist Party in the canal. For God's sake.
The president cannot claim here that he is only going to talk about the canal, that he is only going to talk about sovereignty. He cannot do that. The national territory cannot be alienated, sold, or ceded to anyone or to any foreign state, and that base of Darien is to alienate and cede our territory.
Contradictoriamente, mientras Trump lanza dardos al gobierno panameño.
Contradictorily, while Trump throws darts at the Panamanian government, the Canal administration signed a cyber cooperation understanding with the Southern Command that includes training in cybersecurity, supply chain security, information exchange, and technical assistance, which in turn expands the agreement signed in 2022 by the United States. The same day Hosley left, the canal declared as a priority the construction of the Indian River Reservoir and allocated funds for it, a project rejected by the communities in the northwestern part of the basin that would be flooded. This study was carried out by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and U.S. investors are already eyeing this project. At the same time, while the concessions failed to placate Trump's onslaught, the Panamanian government and the Canal administration hired lobbyists and lawyers in the United States to defend the country, ironically, from the United States itself.
Para defender al país, irónicamente, del propio Estados Unidos. Para TeleSUR, desde Ciudad de Panamá, Reca Chandiramani.
And we now move on to other topics. Ecuador increased from 6 to 8 the number of provinces that have declared an emergency due to the heavy rainy season that has hit the territory, leaving 9 dead and almost 1,100 people affected since January. This measure was informed by the Secretary of Risk Management, Jorge Carrillo, in the face of the prolonged and powerful rainfalls that also affected some 16,500 people and more than 5,000 houses, as well as brigades and roads. In addition, on Monday, 4 members of a family died due to a landslide that affected a house in Manabí as a result of the downpours. This situation heavily contrasts with the drought of 2024, the worst in 60 years, that resulted in forest fires and blackouts of up to 14 hours a day due to the adaptations in the production of hydroelectric power plants.
Este es el primer año que se ha hecho esto.
This is the first year this has happened. The houses around there didn't used to flood. I have a sister-in-law and her house flooded. The bakery motor, the refrigerator, everything was damaged. Her house filled up with water. Those who have houses, they're going to lose everything. Refrigerators, appliances, beds are lost and damaged because the water reaches a point where you can't fight against nature.
And Brazil has announced the creation of its first vaccine against dengue fever developed by the Butantan Institute in collaboration with the Chinese company Sushi Biologics. The announcement was led by the President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, who signed executive orders to boost the production of these and other vaccines, including those against H5N8 influenza and respiratory syncytial virus. With an initial investment of approximately $221 million, the dengue vaccine is expected to be distributed throughout the healthcare network with at least 60 million doses available next year. The single-dose vaccine has been proven to be effective against all types of dengue, representing a significant advance for Brazil, which has faced an alarming increase in cases in the recent years. Now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. Israel has carried out a series of strikes in Syria, leaving at least 2 dead in the town of Sargaya, north of Damascus. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the attack was carried out by an Israeli drone. In addition, early Tuesday morning, Israeli fighter jets bombed several strategic sites in the Al-Kiswal region south of Damascus and in the Daraa province, extending their incursion to the administrative border with Quneitra. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has justified these attacks, assuring that the country will not allow southern Syria to become a southern Lebanon, referring to the influence of groups such as Hezbollah in the region. And we stay in Syria as citizens have lifted placards and chanted slogans as they rallied against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent remarks. Benjamin Netanyahu said on Sunday that southern Syria must be completely demilitarized, warning that Israel would not accept the presence of the forces of Damascus' Islamist-led government near its territory. In response to these statements, Syrian citizens gathered to express their disagreement. The demonstrators expressed that they were not surprised by Netanyahu's statements, while recognizing that the enemy had begun to intensify the rhetoric in their strategies.
I came here to stand with my fellow citizens to affirm Syria's unity and sovereignty and reject division calls. I also denounce Netanyahu's statements that have not yet been responded to by the new Syrian presidency.
The enemy has started escalating its rhetoric and boldness. Netanyahu's remarks did not surprise us, as we are familiar with his plans and strategies. Our protest today was necessary to demand that the United Nations compel the occupation to adhere to the 1974 disengagement agreement.
And in other news, the International Book Fair at the Palacio de Minería of the National Autonomous University of Mexico opened its doors this weekend. Our correspondent Antonio Aranda with all the details.
The halls of the Palacio de Minería host the 46th edition of the National Autonomous University of Mexico International Book Fair, a cultural event that brings together readers of all ages. Alejandro and Lydia are regular visitors to the book fair, besides sharing their love as a couple. They also share their love for reading.
We've been coming here for a while now, and we've been reading and being regular readers. We love coming here. We find things here. We always say, we are not going to buy anymore, and we always leave with books.
We love the place. It's a wonderful place in its architecture, and besides, you can find all kinds of reading.
Teacher Alejandro seeks to encourage the habit of reading among his students. So every year, he brings his group to visit the International Book Fair at the Palacio de Minería.
It is very important in contemporary times to be promoting reading, the approach to literature, and the arts. Undoubtedly, the book fair has a series of events that are significant for the learning of different topics, so that we consider that it is important and valuable that young people are encouraged to participate in these events and continue with the noble act of reading.
For young people, this is a great way to get to know new interests.
I find it very interesting to discover new books and see what I can buy, what I can acquire again, and I really like to look for art stuff.
For the authors, this is an opportunity to open a direct dialogue with their readers.
Some of us talk about life, about the world, and there is not much work, and a good conversation arises with the reader, and you entertain yourself talking maybe with the public that hangs around here. You meet interesting people.
During the International Book Fair at the Palacio de Minería, there will be hundreds of presentations, discussions, and talks with authors. With more than 1,000 cultural activities, the International Book Fair continues to be the main reference in terms of literary encounters, and also continues with its main objective, to form critical and reflective readers with the reality of our country.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.